When Francisco Alvarez hit a walk-off home run on Monday, I thought that was a moment that could not be topped this season. Turns out in less than 48 hours, Jesse Winker did just that.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. This has been a crazy week already for the New York Mets. Are you having fun yet? This is why you want your team in the mix. That's why you shouldn't be, in May and June rooting for a sell-off. No, root for your team to be in the mix, because what we're getting right now is the fruits of the labor from June and July for the Mets to get themselves into the race, because now you are playing in playoff games at the end of August into September, where you're going up against teams that are playing for something on the other side with packed ballparks, and it is so much fun to watch these games. And it all culminates in another walk-off home run. Jesse Winker delivering his signature Mets moment, a pinch hit walk-off homer where he crushes the baseball, gets halfway down the line, does the celebration, swipes as hard as he can with his hand, and then takes his helmet, slams it down, spikes his elbow guard, runs around the bases. I mean, just so much fun. I don't know about you guys. I have watched that home run and all the subsequent celebrations for the past however many hours since the game, just reveling in what was an incredible moment for this team. This is why you're a fan. It's for games like this, moments like this, the way that a baseball team can make you feel like a kid again. So much fun. And this series against the Orioles was a really good measuring stick for this team to have moving forward. Doesn't matter that the Orioles haven't been playing their best brand of baseball lately. It's still a team that is right atop the standings in the American League, one of the best teams in baseball, a lineup that is deep, and you had to really fight for it in each of these games, and you come out with two of them, and now you can go into this road trip and say, you know what, we can beat anybody. That's what this Mets team gained in this series. And they are on a plane flight. They've already gone through a plane flight as I'm recording this, where they were on a West Coast swing here, where they were just riding high on the incredible series that was. So you cannot overstate enough how much this series means to this Mets team. And we'll see how it holds up in San Diego. But it feels like this Mets team just got on one of those waves that they've talked about, where they can hopefully ride this thing all the way to the finish line. Unbelievable series. Let's break down the whole game here, because there was so many different moments that we could talk about. The beginning of this game, I thought for a second we might be talking about Sean Manaea throwing a perfect game, because he was perfect through the first 5 2/3 innings. And then the end of his start turned into one of the worst calls you will ever see. But starting with Manaea, as I mentioned, he's perfect, almost through 6, retires the first 17 batters that he faces. He's sitting 2-2 against Jackson Holliday. He hits him with the pitch that ends the perfect game. Then his next pitch that he throws, going from that clear letdown, right? You think you might throw a perfect game. You're almost 2/3 of the way through, and you lose it by hitting a batter. That's the last way you want to lose that type of a bid. Tries to get ahead on Austin Slater, throws a fastball that gets way too much plate. Boom, 2-run homer, and the game's tied. Now, the Mets had scored early in this game as Francisco Lindor hit his 25th home run of the season. In the 5th inning, Harrison Bader got hit by a pitch to lead off the inning. Mark Vientos gets a base hit where Harrison Bader goes first to third. Now, if you remember on yesterday's show, we talked about the fact that Zach Eflin hit the IL, so the Mets are facing Cole Irvin. I think they went into this game knowing that they were probably only going to see Irvin for a couple of innings, and they were probably too aggressive. You saw a lot of Mets hitters expanding the zone a little bit, letting Irvin off the hook because this guy doesn't have great stuff, and you allowed him to live outside of the zone a little bit and stay in that game a lot longer than he should have. And the Mets just didn't have this great offensive performance. But again, It's a good team over there. They played good defense, and the Mets, end up in a situation where it's a tie game through 7. And after Irvin came out, Colin Selby came in and really solidified or settled things, you'd say, for the Orioles. He did give up one of the runs that was inherited from Irvin on a ground out off the bat of JD Martinez that scored Bader. But then he ends up getting through that inning, even though he walked a couple guys. And then he gets through the bottom of the 6th inning. So it's all tied up going into the 7th. Sean Manaea goes back out there in the 7th inning after giving up the 2 runs. He gives up a leadoff single, but still gets through the inning without giving up a run. Craig Kimbrell comes on in the bottom of the 7th inning, and Mark Vientos goes opposite field, hits his 20th home run of the season to give the Mets a 3-2 lead. And it felt like that was it. That was the moment. There was the momentum. The Mets were going to win this game by a score of 3-2. This is where the game got crazy. So Sean Manaea comes back out for the 8th inning, gives up a leadoff single. Carlos Mendoza goes to Jose Butto. Butto typically pitches with at least 2 days rest. I wondered on yesterday's show, would he be made available for this game? He was. He did look a little bit rusty, but first batter that he faces, a battle of an at-bat. He throws a pitch that got so much plate, and at the same time, you saw a throw down at second base, and the Mets had a strike him out, throw him out double play. So they were going to be in a situation with 2 outs, nobody on, 8th inning, 3-2 lead, Edwin Diaz ready to go for the 9th. They won that baseball game. Problem, the umpire made one of the worst calls you will ever see with the biggest implications, calling that a ball. So all of a sudden you go from bases clear, 2 outs, to runners at first and second, nobody out. A dramatic swing. I tweeted this out. I said this should be the Armando Galarraga of the ABS system. Remember, Galarraga had a perfect game, and then there was a play at first base that was a Jim Joyce, called the runner safe instead of out, and blew Galarraga's perfect game. It has made him way more memorable than had he actually gotten the perfect game. And ultimately, not long after that, Major League Baseball finally put in a challenge system. And so now egregious calls can get overturned. Well, there's been a lot of talk about an ABS system that is automatic balls and strikes, where, if anything, they might put in a challenge system where teams can challenge some of these calls. And this would be a moment the Mets would have absolutely challenged because it was a 2-out swing and 2 runners on. It was so bad. And in that moment, you certainly thought the Mets were going to lose this game because of it. Now, Jose Butto did a great job. He ends up walking the next guy to load the bases, but he gets a big strikeout on Ryan O'Hearn, who had the nerve, after seeing what had happened a couple batters before, how his team just got the break of the century. He had the nerve, when he strikes out swinging, to argue about a pitch earlier in the at-bat that he didn't like. Yes, the umpire was terrible in this game, but that is just not having any sense of what's going on around you. So that was just a horrible look. All of a sudden, I don't like the Orioles teams as much watching them throughout this series. They complain a lot. Anyway, after that, though, Adley Rutschman hits a sac fly. Brendan Nimmo makes a nice catch going towards the foul line. That brings in a run. Jose Butto then has to face Gunnar Henderson with 2 guys on. Gunnar Henderson, guy's going to finish top 5 in the MVP this year. He gets him to pop out. So incredible job by Jose Butto to navigate those waters and still keep the game, in reach for the Mets, keep it tied. Edwin Diaz comes on and looks dominant in the 9th inning. That's a huge thing for this team moving forward. It looks like they have Edwin Diaz back in his prime form, because he had 2 big strikeouts, just looked like himself. And both of the games the Mets won this series, Edwin Diaz pitching a scoreless 9th inning to give his team a chance to walk it off in the 9th. And then the home run we talk about here to open up the show, Jesse Winker pinch hits for Harrison Bader, starts off in an 0-2 hole, and just has a great at-bat, spitting on some pitches that are outside the strike zone, works the count full, gets a pitch he can hit. And as he said after the game, he was just trying to get on base in front of Francisco Lindor. By the way, Jesse, I know you know Francisco Lindor, for 2 decades now, but we're calling him Francisco now, not Frankie. It's just a little thing. But Jesse Winker, in that full count, hits one left center, and the Mets come away winners. That celebration, I can't get enough of it. And I think it really has given this team momentum. If you think back to 2015, you have the Wilmer Flores home run, right? That gave the Mets some momentum. And then you get Cespedes. There was that series against the Nationals where the Mets are going up against a team that they were neck and neck with in the division. And if my memory serves, they swept the Nationals. Cespedes had some big home runs in that series. I think Daniel Murphy did as well. And the Mets sort of rolled from there. This felt like the type of series where the Mets could have grabbed momentum that they can ride for the final 35 games of the season. And that's what I want to talk about next. Momentum. Did the Mets just get it? And where will it take them? We'll go through in just a minute. First, though, quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Tonal. When life gets busy, fitting in a workout can be stressful. With Tonal, you can get efficient workouts personalized just for you and are available with the amount of time you have. Tonal is the world's smartest and most effective strength training system that helps you get stronger. Powered by AI, Tonal learns with every rep so it can deliver workouts personalized just for you. It's like having a personal trainer at home with you, as Tonal will optimize every workout just for you. Unlike traditional gym equipment, Tonal uses adaptive digital weight to advance your training techniques. From professional athletes to the mom of three, Tonal is trusted by thousands who have become their strongest. Right now, Tonal is offering our listeners $200 off your Tonal purchase with the promo code LOCKEDONMLB. That's Tonal.com and use that promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $200 off your purchase. That's Tonal.com, promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $200 off. If you're an everyday listener to the show, make sure you become a Locked On Mets insider. This is our texting service where you get updates from me anytime news breaks on the Mets. You can ask me questions anytime. You also can take part in our Locked On Mets signed photo giveaways and get the lineup graphic sent to your phone each day so you know who's in the starting lineup without ever having to go on social media. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, find the link in the episode description. Go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. I want to talk a little bit about momentum. On July 26th, the New York Mets had momentum. They had 2 months going where they were the best team in baseball. Incredible June, incredible July, and they were going up against the Atlanta Braves. I was actually on a plane cross country from LA to Fort Lauderdale. I was coming back from my vacation to Disneyland. I had a great time out there. The Mets are winning games out of the break. It was a good time to be a Mets fan. They made the first trade of the deadline, picking up Ryan Stanek. I remember just thinking, man, these wheels need to hit the ground because I have so much I want to talk about. I want to talk about the Stanek trade. Kodai Senga looks brilliant in his return. And this Mets team was about to advance past the Braves in the standings for the first time since the end of 2022. It was a lot of fun. Get off the plane. I'm waiting in luggage claim. I believe I was actually recording a short to put on YouTube, but Locked On Now, talking about the trade and what was going on. And Kodai Senga ends up pulling his calf, and then it seemed like the momentum was just taken away from the Mets in that moment. They lose the next 2 games against the Braves. They did end up winning the following series against the Twins, which was happening during the trade deadline. But the momentum clearly wasn't on their side quite as much after the Senga injury. You hit the road for a 10-game trip where the Mets go to 4 different cities, and they have a disappointing series against the Angels. They handle business in a makeup game against the Cardinals, and then after dropping the first game to the Rockies, they battle back, they win that series. But then they're embarrassed against the Seattle Mariners, come back home, they lose a series to the A's. You have the Marlins on the ropes. You have 2 very convincing wins against them, and you can't complete the series sweep. Momentum had just left the Mets. They just weren't feeling like the same team that had all the magic on their side for that 2-month stretch. The Mets started August 7-8 through 15 games, and they played a lot of bad teams at the start of the month and didn't capitalize on that schedule. Baltimore Orioles coming to town. The Mets in this series, they had 2 very parallel games. David Peterson, Sean Manaea, their best 2 pitchers this year based on the team's record when they're on the mound and just the way these guys have pitched. They deliver for you going deep into these games. David Peterson, he falters in his final inning, ends up coughing up the lead, but he doesn't give it back to the Orioles. The game stays tied. Jose Budo pitches a scoreless 8th. Edwin Diaz scoreless 9th. Francisco Alvarez with the incredible walk-off home run. And then this game today, Sean Manaea, perfect. almost through 6, ends up faltering, giving up a couple runs. Mets get hosed in the 8th inning on that call, tie ball game, but Jose Butto gets him through it. Edwin Diaz shut down 9th, walk-off victory. Now you got momentum. Now, if they go into San Diego and they lose this series or they split it, maybe the momentum isn't quite on their side, but let's just say the momentum is. And they find their way to beating the Padres in this series, taking 3 of 4. You have a day off. You then go to Arizona for another pivotal series. The Mets win these next 2 series. They're going to be right there with 28 games left to play. I would venture to say if they win these next 2 series, they will be back in a playoff spot. They're in a game and a half out right now. A little note on Peterson Manaea. I tweeted this out tonight as I was prepping the show. The Mets are now 28-11 when those 2 guys are on the hill. On this upcoming road trip, you're going to get 4 of their starts. Maybe the Mets can win all those games, and we'll see how they fare with Severino, Blackburn, and Quintana on the mound as well. But this is a team that I feel has just grabbed back the momentum in this series. If they carry it with them and they have a good road trip, they come on home, have a good homestand, they're going to be right there down the stretch. And that's all I care about. I've said on this show before, just go into that final week of the season in a playoff spot or very close within a playoff spot. Be between 2 games, within 2 games of a spot going into that series against the Braves. And I'm happy because the Mets would then control their destiny, or if they're able to beat the Braves, they might just be in position and then you hold on against the Brewers. You're going to be there. But this is a fun team to watch right now. And there's a lot going their way. I think the biggest thing that they have to hold their hat on is their depth. And we saw it in this game. I talked about on yesterday's show how this is the deepest Mets team we've seen since 2015, or maybe I talked about it after the win. I can't remember on Monday. But when you have Jesse Winker to come up in that spot and pinch hit for Harrison Bader, that's an at-bat that was going to DJ Stewart for a majority of this season. And maybe DJ Stewart would have worked a walk, and maybe Francisco Lindor is the hitter with an RBI double. Maybe Stewart draws a walk, Tyrone Taylor comes in a pinch run, and the Mets still find their way to a victory. But instead, because of what the Mets did at the trade deadline to pick up Jesse Winker, how deep this team has gotten now that Starling Marte is back in the fold, pushing Jesse Winker, I don't know if I'd quite say to a bench role, but certainly not an everyday role. And not even the strong side of the platoon, probably playing about half the time and needing to take the most or get the most out of his opportunities when he comes into a game like this. You have that card that you can play. And Jesse Winker puts together a great at-bat, hits that home run, and now you carry that with you. That is a huge victory for this team. The Mets are now 9-9 this month. They still have a chance to put together a great August. If they win these next 2 series, and then they have the White Sox for 2 games to close out this month. It's a 3-game series, but it'll bleed into September. There's a world where this team actually finishes well above 500 in August. And I talked about it weeks ago with the Padres when they were on this run, and they pretty much have stayed on it. But I said, can they stay hot all the way through? They're 22-5 in their last 27 games. Is that going to hold up? This is a huge series for the New York Mets to find their way to get a victory. If they can do that, they're going to be in line here. And it's just crazy how much things change because in that 8th inning today, when things are getting away from the Mets, you're envisioning all the bad things that can happen. But the team showed resilience. Butto got you through that inning, and the Mets walk it off. And now you go into this upcoming series, and the Mets have that momentum. They also have a lineup that I think is on the precipice of another hot streak where they're going to really pile on runs. Mark Vientos in the 2-hole has been a great move by Carlos Mendoza. He's on a 9-game hitting streak. He's driven in 7 runs in his last 8 games played. He's scored in 6 of his last 8 games played. He is statistically, based on OPS and WRC+, the best hitter on the Mets this year. And he's got 20 home runs when he missed, the first 2 months of the season? That's pretty impressive. Francisco Lindor is the first shortstop in MLB history to have 3 seasons of 25 home runs and 25 stolen bases. He is very close to getting to the 30-30 club again, playing at an MVP level. I'm going to be writing an article for Just Baseball after I wrap up the show tonight, leading into tomorrow morning, where I'm going to break down his MVP case because he's there. He's right on the precipice with 35 games left to play. Beyond Lindor and Vientos, you have JD Martinez getting hot. Brandon Nimmo seems to be turning a corner. Pete Alonso still has his moments. And you have all of that depth. That's how the Mets are going to win. It's going to come down to this position player core. Can they continue to pile on runs? Can they play great defense? But they have all the pieces to do that. If they get enough pitching, this team can absolutely make the playoffs. But either way, I think they're going to give us a really thrilling final 35 games this season. And I cannot wait for it to kick off with this series against the Padres. That's what we're going to talk about next. Can the Mets carry this momentum into San Diego? We'll preview the series in just a minute. First, though, another word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Supply House. Get supplies from the site that's made for skilled trades, supplyhouse.com. Supplyhouse.com is a reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online with their easy-to-use website, which is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining Supply House's free Trade Master program, where every Trade Master gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at supplyhouse.com/T-M and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products from anywhere with just a few clicks at supplyhouse.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. And there are only 2 home stands left this season, not to mention a couple road trips. But you got to catch the Mets before the end of this season. Don't miss out. This is a fun team to watch live, and Game Time is the only ticketing app that will give you complete peace of mind with purchase. You can see the view of your seat before you arrive, so you know exactly what to expect. There's all-in prices that are shown up front, so you don't get hit with those hidden fees when you go to check out, so you know you're getting a great deal. And you can buy your tickets in seconds with just 2 taps. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Stay up to date with all the latest in the world of sports by checking out Locked On Sports Today, streaming 24/7 on YouTube. On July 20th, the San Diego Padres, through 100 games, were 50-50. That night they won, and they went on to win 7 games in a row. They then lost one, won 2, lost 1, and then won 7 more in a row. Dating back to July 20th, this team is 22-6. I misspoke in the last segment, saying they were 22-5 in their last 27 games. That was prior to today's game. But still, a 28-game stretch where you're 22-6, that is really hard to do. They have been reeling off victories, and you look at how they've done it, pitching has been the main thing. Now, today, the pitching wasn't there. Matt Waldron gave up 10 runs in an 11-4 loss to the Twins, but they won the first 2 games of that series. Across this span of all this winning, prior to today's game, the Padres had a 3 ERA as a team that trailed only the Tampa Bay Rays. Their bullpen has been even better, a 2.41 ERA during that span. They've also gotten good performance from some of their main players. As a team, they've hit 285, 345 on base, 465 slug, 130 team WRC plus. WRC plus measures hitters on a league average of 100. So as a team, they've had a line that's been 30% better than league average. A lot of that has come from Jackson Merrill, the rookie center fielder, who's been red hot, surging towards potentially being the rookie of the year this year. Merrill's hit 340 during this stretch with 5 home runs, some of them being clutch home runs late in games. He has a 180 WRC plus, so 80% better than your league average hitter. Xander Bogaerts has been hitting 361 for them during this span, 155 WRC plus. Jurickson Profar continues to put together his career year, 6 home runs, 17 RBIs during this span. Manny Machado, 7 home runs, team best, 21 RBIs. Jake Cronenworth hasn't even been playing his best baseball. He's got 18 RBIs. The one big loss to their lineup recently is Hae-Sung Kim, who hit the IL with shoulder inflammation. Tyler Wade is filling in his place at shortstop. We'll see if they go with that. They can also put Donovan Solano at second or third if they wanted to, but they're not going to move Machado out third. So the one option they could have is put Solano at second base or first. and then they can slide a rise over to second potentially, move Cronenworth around, move Bogarts. They got a lot of options because they have a million shortstops. Their team definitely did take a hit by losing Kim as far as his defense, but he hasn't even been having the best offensive season. So I think that's probably why they just put Tyler Wade into that spot as a placeholder. Doesn't seem like Kim's going to be out too long. Fernando Tatis has actually been on the shelf for all of this. David Peralta's been filling in pretty admirably for him in right. But if you look at this team, it really comes down to Merrill, Bogarts, Profar, Cronenworth, and Tatis. It's that group that you look at that is really good. And then Arise obviously has the potential. He just hasn't been hitting lately. I look at the Mets 5 with Lindor, Vientos, Nimmo, JD Martinez, and Pete Alonso. Can that group beat this team in a series? Absolutely, especially because the Mets have such a better bench and just depth overall in this roster. I honestly do believe the Mets have a far better team on the position player front. Pitching side, the Padres have the Mets beat when it comes to bullpen. So you have to win the beginning part of these games. You don't want to get into a bullpen game with the Padres where it's a late tie ball game and you have to try to outpitch their pen. That's not going to end well for the Mets in most games. They're really deep in that bullpen. You can make an argument that they have the best bullpen in baseball after getting Tanner Scott at the deadline, as well as Jason Adam from the Rays. They really did take a strength and make it much, much stronger. And that's really what they've been winning with, since the deadline. But even before it, it was really good pitching. So that's what you got to go up against in this series. As I mentioned again a couple weeks ago, can the Padres stay this hot all the way through where they were winning every day? Well, we've seen now that they have taken a slight step back. They lost the series against the Rockies over the weekend. They beat the Twins in the first two games of their series this week, but they couldn't finish off the sweep. There's some vulnerability there, and the Mets just have to play their best brand of baseball. And I honestly think if the Mets do that, they can beat any team. Now, the pitching matchups in this series, you got Luis Severino and Dylan Cease for the first game tonight. That's going to be a thrilling one. The Mets really beat up Dylan Cease when they faced him earlier this season. I'm sure he wants some revenge. Since then, the Padres have gone 8-3 in Dylan Cease's last 11 starts. But remember, the Mets scored 7 runs on Cease and knocked him out of the game in the 4th inning. So can they have similar success this time? Be very interesting to find out. Luis Severino is coming off a shutout. Can he build off that, be a better version of himself down the stretch? The Mets are going to need him to really pick it up and close this season strong. He's had a good year, but he has a chance to finish this and have a great year to really set himself up for free agency as well. Sean Manaea is the clear ace of this team right now, but Sevy's got to be the number 2. So we'll see how he does in this series. You're not going to get Manaea. So Sevy's got to get this team off to a good start. Game 2 is Paul Blackburn versus Joe Musgrove. Mets fans don't like Joe Musgrove, I don't think, after that playoff game a couple years ago. He missed a large chunk of this season due to tendonitis in his elbow caused from a bone spur. So now he's back. He's made 2 starts since coming off the IL, but he's not full go yet. He has not hit 75 pitches in these 2 starts. I think it was 67 in the first one, 73 in the most recent one. And he was pulled at 4 1/3 innings each time. So hasn't even gone through that 5th inning yet. That is a chance for the Mets to maybe get to some of those middle relievers, not the late inning guys. And even if you do get into the late inning guys, if you can knock Musgrove out of the game early and you get that bullpen more tired for the back half of this series, that's going to be really important. It's a very pivotal game too, I think. If I look at this series, the games that stand out to me, it's game 2 and game 4. Game 1, good pitching matchup, Severino versus Cease. Game 3, same thing. David Peterson versus Michael King. King's been great this year. 3.18 ERA on the season. Since June 1st, he's 7-2. He's pitched to a 2.39 ERA, and he leads Major League Baseball in wins above replacement, according to Fangraphs, at 3 wins above replacement. Racked up 75 1/3 innings pitched in those 13 starts, and he's striking out more than 11 per 9 during that span. So Michael King has pitched like a frontline guy over the last couple months. He's been huge for them. That's going to be a tough game 3. David Peterson, though, has been very good for the Mets, and the Mets typically win when Peterson's on the mound. So that'll be a fun one. If the Mets can win 2 of those first 3 games, I kind of like the final matchup. And I know that sounds crazy because it includes Jose Quintana, but he's going up against Martin Perez. And Martin Perez has been very good since coming over to the Padres. He has a 2.74 ERA in 4 starts. But with the Pirates, prior to the trade, he had an ERA over 5. So I think he's due for a bad outing. Hopefully the Mets are in position to win a series, not just, salvage a split when they get to that point. And if they are, maybe this is the start where Jose Quintana can turn things around. But I'll be covering it all for you, game by game, all the way through the weekend. So make sure you listen wherever you get your podcast, subscribe, follow, rate, review. On YouTube, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. We're trying to get to 10,000 subs by the end of the season. So I appreciate all of you. Continue to subscribe. You can follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen or your first watch every day. Now, for your second watch, head over to YouTube and check out the first ever 24/7 streaming channel that covers everything, the world of sports. The local experts from each team, our legal experts from each league. Find Locked On Sports Today streaming 24/7 on YouTube and on Amazon Fire TV.